Hi guys. Remember the robin I showed you that's built a nest on our ladder? Well, the eggs are still there and she's been sitting on the nest every day taking care of her eggs. So I thought we'd read another bird book. This one is called The Best Nest. Look at those birds built their nest in the mailbox.
Yeah.
That's silly.
Yeah.
Have you guys found any birds' nests around in your yard? I bet you could find one if you look. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is best. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. Uh-oh. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it. Let's look for a new place right now. Well, she's demanding. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. And they must be heading for that.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. But somebody else had already moved in. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot.
It's a person.
Yep. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right.
We moved into the mailbox.
But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. Top of the bell tower of the church. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't it too big? Asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. Then they got some soda straws and broom straws. They got some sweater string. Uh-oh.
Like taking it off.
Right off of his arms. They got some stocking string and mattress stuffing. They got some horsehair. They got some man hair. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, and all the horsehair, and all the man hair they could carry. They took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house. He sang his song again. I love our house. I love our nest. In all the world, our nest is best. He was so busy singing, he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up to the bird's new nest. The rope rang the big bell right under Mr. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. It's still ringing. See all the bongs?
Bong, bong,
Mm-hmm.
bong, 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 bong.
When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws. Where was Mrs. Bird? I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low. He looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. He looked down into a chimney, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. He looked down into a water barrel, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Then he saw a big fat cat. There was a big fat smile on the fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. Oh dear, he cried. This big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird. Mr. Bird flew off. I'll never see Mrs. Bird again, he cried. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something.
Crash.
It was his old house, that old house that Mrs. Bird hated. I'll go inside, said Mr. Bird. I'll rest here until the rain stops. Mr. Bird went in, and there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing, I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, this nest is best. You here? Gasped Mr. Bird. I thought you hated this old nest. Mrs. Bird smiled. I used to hate it, she said, but a mother bird can change her mind. You see, there's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird. Yeah. And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. Cute.
Is that the mother nest?
Yeah. That was so neat.
Yeah.
Did you know that one time when I crocheted outside, I snipped off all my little ends and I put them in the yard, and I found a bird's nest with all my scraps. The bird gathered all my little scraps of yarn and put it in its nest, and it was colorful, so that was really fun. And our Bible story tonight is from Genesis 31 through 33. Esau forgives. Remember last night he had his blessing stolen from his brother?
Yeah.
And he was really upset, but now it says he forgives. Jacob lived among his mother's people for many, many years. He had a large family. He had herds of sheep, goats, cattle, donkeys, and camels. One day, God came to Jacob again and told him to return to the land of his father Isaac. Jacob's mother, Rebekah, had died. Jacob had not seen his father in 20 years. He wanted to go back to his old home, but he was afraid to meet his brother. What if Esau was still angry with him? Jacob had an idea. He called his servants and asked them to take some animals to Esau as a gift. There were 220 sheep and 220 goats. There were 30 mother camels and their young. There were 50 cattle and 30 donkeys. Then Jacob went to meet Esau. What would happen? Would Esau want to fight? When Esau saw Jacob, he ran to him and put his arms around him. The brothers wept tears of joy. Why did you send me all these animals? Esau asked. I already have plenty. Each had gone his own way, just as God had meant them to. Now God had brought them together again. It was still nice of him to bring him all those animals as a gift.
Yeah.
I hope you liked the story tonight, and I hope you can find a bird's nest and watch a bird like we are. It's lots of fun.
Good night.